Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, I have a doll shop in Denver and I am the creator of Virtual Doll Convention. And if you're not new here, welcome back. I am excited to hang out with you guys a little bit and we're going to have story time. We are going to read a little bit of some excerpts, just probably the first chapter or two of Raggedy Ann Stories, which was written by Johnny Gruelle in 1918. Johnny Gruelle was such an amazing man. He was such a giving person. He had a very, very kind heart. Somebody would have to have an incredibly beautiful heart and wonderful soul to be able to write what is Raggedy Ann Stories. They are uplifting, they are fun, they are stories that I just think anyone would love, which is why they were always just so popular. And he wrote a lot of different books. Johnny Gruelle worked for the Indianapolis Star as an illustrator, and he had a big career before he even started the Raggedy Ann Stories. He was already very successful. But when he started Raggedy Ann Stories, it was a new adventure for him. And it was a wonderful thing that he did following the death of his beloved daughter, Marcella. And it was a way that he could channel his pain and his grief into something wonderful that was incredible for the entire world. Raggedy Ann has touched the hearts of millions, and she is a doll that has brought a tremendous amount of comfort to children and adults for the last 100 years. Raggedy Ann came out in 1918, and she has changed many, many lives, and she's certainly changed my life. I have always been a really big fan of Raggedy Ann, as you guys know, and I am excited to read some of it. So hello everybody that's tuning in. Hi, let me know where you're tuning in from. So Raggedy Ann Stories is the first one, the original, and it is such a fun book. This is the book that I showed you guys yesterday. The graphics are wonderful. There's Marcella with Raggedy Ann right there, and this is the book that came with the doll that you can see right here in the middle that Johnny Gruelle entertained some kids at a local bookstore, and he was doing some illustrations for them, and he was doing the camel with the wrinkled knees, and a little girl named Helen, who was 5 years old, said to Johnny that she could draw a better camel with the wrinkled knees, and there's her illustration. And then Johnny said to Helen, "With many happy wishes, Johnny Gruelle." And then he drew a camel with the wrinkled knees, and he said, "And you can draw a camel much better." It just shows you what an amazing person he was. He wrote back to all of his fans, and when he would return their letters, he would usually also include an illustration. So what an amazing person. Okay. Hi, everybody. Pull up a seat. Just pretend like we're at the library right now and we're all just hanging out, sitting on the floor, enjoying a little bit of doll time and relaxation. Marcella liked to play up in the attic at Grandma's quaint old house, way out in the country, for there were so many old forgotten things to find up in there. One day, when Marcella was up in the attic and had played with the old spinning wheel until she had grown tired of it, she curled up on an old horsehair sofa to rest. "I wonder what's in that barrel, way back in the corner," she thought, as she jumped from the sofa and climbed over the two dusty trunks to the barrel standing in the back of the eaves. It was quite dark back there, so when Marcella had pulled a large bundle of things from the barrel, she took them over to the dormer window where she could see better. There was a funny little bonnet with long white ribbons. Marcella put it on. In an old leather bag, she found a number of tintypes of funny-looking men and women in old-fashioned clothes. And there was one picture of a very pretty little girl with long curls tied tightly back from her forehead and wearing a long dress and funny pantaloons which reached her shoe tops. And then out of the heap, She pulled an old rag doll with only one shoe button eye and a painted nose and a smiling mouth. Her dress was of soft material, blue with pretty little flowers and dots all over it. Forgetting everything else in the happiness of her find, Marcella caught the old rag doll and ran down the stairs to show Grandma. "Well, well," exclaimed Grandma. "Where did you find it?" "It's old Raggedy Ann," she went on as she hugged the doll. "I had forgotten her. She has been in the attic for 50 years, I guess. Well, well, dear old Raggedy Ann. I will sew another button for her right away." And Grandma went to the machine drawer and she got her needle and thread. Marcella watched the sewing while Grandma told Marcella how she had played with Raggedy Ann when she was a little girl. "Now," Grandma laughed, "Raggedy Ann, you have 2 fine shoe button eyes, and with them you can see the changes that have taken place in the world while you have been shut up in the attic for so long. For Raggedy Ann, you have a new playmate and mistress now, and I hope you both will have so much happiness together as you and I used to have." Then Grandma gave Raggedy Ann to Marcella, saying very seriously, "Marcella, let me introduce my very dear friend, Raggedy Ann. Raggedy, this is my granddaughter, Marcella." And Grandma gave the doll a little twitch with her fingers in such a way that the doll nodded her head to Marcella. "Oh, Grandma, thank you ever so much," Marcella cried as she gave Grandma a hug and a kiss. "Raggedy Ann and I will just have so many loads of fun." And this is how Raggedy Ann joined the family at Marcella's house, where she began the adventures of Raggedy Ann told in the following stories. There's Marcella getting to visit Raggedy Ann. And there's Marcella up in the attic where she found Raggedy Ann the first time. And just to have some fun, here is the Raggedy Ann that came with this wonderful book. And she is so sweet with her little shoe button eyes and her little face. This one you guys are really going to love because she is really old and she has a hand-drawn face. Look at that. Doesn't it just remind you? Doesn't it just seem like it's the actual doll from the story? It's just, look at that. So sweet. And we also have a Raggedy Andy over here. Very early, sweet little chap. He's got a couple water stains and things, and you can barely see his nose, but he is just so incredibly sweet. It's like they're popping right out of the stories. Okay, so the first story is Raggedy Ann Learns a Lesson. One day, the dolls were left all to themselves. Their little mistress had placed them all around the room and told them to be nice children while she was away. And there they sat and never even so much as wiggled a finger until their mistress had left the room. Then the soldier dolly turned his head and solemnly winked at Raggedy Ann. And when the front gate clicked and the dollies knew they were alone in their house, they all scrambled to their feet. "Now, let's have a good time," cried the tin soldier. "Let's all go out in search of something to eat." "Yes, let's all go in search of something to eat," cried all the other dollies. "When Mistress had me out playing with me this morning," said Raggedy Ann, "she carried me by the door near the back of the house, and I smelled something that smelled as if it would taste delicious." "Then you lead the way, Raggedy Ann," cried the French dolly. I think it would be a good plan to elect Raggedy Ann as the leader of this expedition, said the Indian doll. At this, all the other dolls clapped their hands together and shouted, "Hurrah! Raggedy Ann will be our leader." And there we can see, there's Marcella telling the dolls to be good while she's away. And we can see the French doll and the soldier doll and a couple other fun little dolls right there. So now we have established that Raggedy Ann is the leader of the dolls in the house. So, Raggedy Ann, very proud indeed to have the confidence and the love of all the other dollies, said that she would be very glad to be their leader. "Follow me," she cried, as her wobbly legs carried her across the floor at a very lively pace. The other dollies followed, racing about the house until they came out the pantry door. "This is the place," cried Raggedy Ann. And sure enough, all the dollies smelled something that they knew must be very good to eat. But none of the dollies were tall enough to open the door. And although they pushed and pulled with all their might, the door remained tightly closed. The dollies were talking and pulling and pushing, and every once in a while one would fall over and the others would step over her in an effort to open the door. Finally, Raggedy Ann drew away from the others and they sat down on the floor. When the other dollies discovered Raggedy Ann sitting there, running her hands through her yarn hair, they knew she was thinking. "Shh, shh," they said to each other, and quietly went over to where Raggedy Ann was sitting, and they sat down in front of her. "There must be a way to get inside," said Raggedy Ann. "Raggedy says there must be a way to get inside," cried all the dolls. "I can't seem to think clearly today," said Raggedy Ann. "It feels as if my head were ripped." At this, the French doll ran over to Raggedy Ann and took off her bonnet. "Yes, there is a rip in your head, Raggedy," and she said as she pulled the pin from her skirt and pinned up Raggedy's head. "It's not a very neat job, for I got some puckers in it," she said. "Oh, that is ever so much better," cried Raggedy Ann. "Now I can think quite clearly." "Now Raggedy Ann can think quite clearly," cried all the other dolls. "My thoughts must have linked out of the rip before," said Raggedy Ann. "They must have all leaked out before, dear Raggedy," cried all the other dolls. "Now that I can think so clearly," said Raggedy Ann, "I think the door must be locked, and to get inside, we must unlock it." "That will be easy," said the Dutch doll, who says "Mama" when he is tipped backwards and forwards, "for we will have the brave tin soldier shoot the key out of the lock." "I can easily do that," cried the tin soldier as he raised his gun. "Oh, Raggedy Ann," cried the French dolly, "please do not let him shoot." "No," said Raggedy Ann, "we must think of a quieter way." After thinking quite hard for a moment, Raggedy Ann jumped up and said, "I have it!" And she caught up the jumping jack and held him up to the door. Then Jack slid up his stick and unlocked the door. Then the dollies all pushed and the door swung open. My, such a scramble! The dolls piled over one another at their desire to be first to get the goodies. They swarmed upon the pantry shelves and in their eagerness spilled a pitcher of cream which ran all over the French dolly's dress. The Indian doll found some cornbread and dipping it in the molasses, he sat down for a good feast. The jar of raspberry jam was overturned, and the dollies ate of this until their faces were all purple. The tin soldier fell from the shelf 3 times and bent one of his tin legs, but he scrambled right back up again. Never had the dolls had so much fun and excitement, and they had eaten their fill when they heard the click of the front of the gate. They did not take the time to climb from the shelves, but they just rolled and jumped up to the floor and scrambled back to their room as fast as they could, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs and jam along the way. There they are, eating their jam and all their yummy things. Just as their mistress had come into the room, the dolls dropped in whatever positions they had happened to be in. "This is funny," cried Mistress. They were all left sitting in their places around the room. "I wonder if Fido has been shaking them up." Then she saw Raggedy Ann's face and picked her up. "Why, Raggedy Ann, you are all sticky. I do believe that you are covered in jam." And Mistress tasted Raggedy Ann's hand. "Yes, it's jam. Shame on you, Raggedy Ann. You've been in the pantry, and all the others too." And with this, the doll's mistress dropped Raggedy Ann to the floor and left the room. When she came back, she had on an apron and her sleeves were rolled up. She picked up all the sticky dolls and putting them in a basket, she carried them out under the apple tree in the garden. Then she placed her little tub and wringer, and she took the dolls out one at a time and scrubbed them down with a scrubbing brush and doused them up and down. And this was a way that all the soap and suds could clean them until they were all clean. Then she hung them out on the clothesline in the sunshine to dry. There the dolls hung all day, swinging and twisting about in the breeze, swayed on the clothesline. "I do believe she scrubbed my face so hard that she wore off my smile," said Raggedy Ann after an hour of silence. There's Marcella out there with the dolls on the clothesline. She rubbed off Raggedy Ann's smile. "No, it's still there," said the tin soldier, as the wind twisted him around so he could see Raggedy. "But I do believe my arms will never work without squeaking. They just feel so rusted," he added. Just then the wind twisted the little Dutch doll and loosened his clothespin so that he fell to the grass below with a sawdusty bump, and as he rolled over he said, "Mama!" in a squeaky voice. Late in the afternoon, the back door opened and the little mistress came out with a table and chairs. After setting the table, she took all the dolls from the line and placed them about the table. They all had lemonade with grape jelly in it, which made it a beautiful lavender color, and little baby teeny weeny cookies with powdered sugar on them. After this lovely dinner, the dolls were taken into the house, where they had their hair brushed and nice clean nighties put on them. Then they were placed into their beds, and Mistress kissed each one of them good night and tiptoed from the room. All the dollies lay as still as mice for only a few minutes. Then Raggedy Ann raised up her cotton stuff elbows and said, "I've been thinking." "Shh," said all the other dollies. "Raggedy Ann has been thinking." "Yes," said Raggedy Ann, "I have been thinking. Our mistress gave us a nice dinner out under the trees to teach us a lesson. She wished us to know that we could have all the goodies we want whenever we wished, if we had only just behaved ourselves. And our lessons was that we must never take without asking what we could always have for the asking. So let us all remember and try never again to do anything which might cause those who love us any unhappiness." "Let us all remember," chimed the other dollies. And Raggedy Ann, with a merry little twinkle in her shoe-button eyes, lay back on her little bed, her cotton head filled with thoughts of love and happiness. Thank you so much for joining me for a little Raggedy Ann story time. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. It was fun to escape to one Johnny Gruelle's wonderful lands of just enchantment and fun. And this story was published in 1918, so it's just a wonderful testament to know that 100 years ago his stories and his message were just as entertaining today as they were over 100 years ago. And of course, we know that the dolls are ever so wonderful and happy. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will be back a little bit later with another program. And thank you so much for tuning and spending a little bit of time with me today for Storytime. All right, bye everybody.